Good evening and welcome back to the current affairs lecture series that we have been doing. Last week was a very happening one, not from the point of view of UPSC but from other aspects. But I have taken some very important topics which are not singularly focused, but they have multiple dimensions. Okay, so today we are going to take this first topic at hand, and that is RBI tightens NBFC lending and disclosure norms. Okay, so why news? Because RBI has released some norms. Actually, 4 circulars have been released by RBI regarding the increase of regulation of upper level and mid level NBFCs. Okay, we'll try to understand what this upper level and mid level and all this scalar representation of NBFCs, scalar classification of NBFCs that RBI did in the last year, and prior to that what was the scenario, and now what is the scenario for NBFCs. Okay, so the news is, after IL and FS and DHFL fiascos, now RBI, actually last year two bigger NBFCs faced a very strong cash crunch. Okay, due to which RBI has now decided to tighten these rules, which will lead to stronger lending and more transparent lending in the NBFC sector. Okay, so what RBI has done, what does the regulation say? First we'll look at that, and then we'll try to understand what is the regulatory regime of NBFCs in India and how are they different from banks. Okay, this will cover the UPSC syllabus from for prelims as well as the mains point of view. Okay. The new rules say that NBFCs in upper layer. Okay, now for understanding what is upper layer and what is lower layer, base layer, we'll need to look at this chart, this diagram, pyramid basically. Now in 2021, RBI stratified non-banking financial companies into 4 basic pyramidal structures or hierarchies. The first one is base level, the second one is mid level, the third one is upper level, and the fourth one is top level. So what happened was, this categorization or this classification was basically done keeping in mind the exposure of NBFCs or the asset size of the NBFCs. Okay, and as we progress from bottom to top, the regulatory structure becomes more stricter. That is, as we go from bottom to top, the regulations applied on NBFCs become stricter. Now, if you try to understand what is the asset size and all, for the base layer, all those NBFCs which have asset size, exposure means investment plus lending. Okay, or asset is what? For an NBFC, asset is a loan, the loan that it has provided to someone else. Okay, what if we consumers take a loan? That will be liability for us, because when we are taking loan, we have an obligation to pay it back after some point in time. Plus, we will have to regularly service the loan in form of interest. So that is why when we are taking loan, any person, any entity, corporate entity as well, when it takes loan, that loan will be counted as an liability in its balance sheet, and when it lends to someone else, then it will be counted as an asset, because after some point of time that loan will be paid back to the person who has lent, plus they will also be receiving some kind of interest regularly. Okay, so base level mein consists of NBFCs having asset size smaller than, there is a typo, smaller than, okay, okay, having asset size smaller than 1000 crores rupees. Now prior to 2021, the basic or the NBFCs which had an exposure or asset size less than 500 crore, or we can say it from a different perspective, any NBFC having an asset size greater than or exposure greater than 500 crore, that was considered systemically important. What they were considered? Systemically important. any such NBFC which has an exposure or investment plus lending greater than 500 crore, ठीक है? Any NBFCs which have exposure, or what is exposure? Exposure means lending plus investment, ठीक है? What does an NBFC do? If it is a financial company, what will it do? It will either take deposits or provide loans. It will either trade in securities. That is what it will do. Okay. So if the investment plus lending is greater than 500 crore, then it will be considered what? Systemically important NBFC. Or any NBFC having a asset size less than rupees 500 crore will not be considered systemically important. But what what RBI has now done, that they have increased this 500 crore to 1000 crore. That means the threshold has been raised from 500 crore rupees to 1000 crore rupees. Now, if any NBFC that has an asset size less than rupees 1000 crore, okay, so that will be basically considered as in the base layer, okay? That will be called NBFC BL, NBFC base layer. Now, what are the characteristics of the NBFCs that reside in the base layer? The base layer NBFC will have a lesser stricter regulation as compared to the mid level and upper level. Usually, the top layer will be empty. Right now it is empty. The top layer will be populated once NBFCs from upper layer have a risk criteria or a risk exposure. They have lent so much money that they have become so important that their regulation has become very they need to be very much regulated like banks. Then it will be switched from upper layer to top layer. अभी का scenario क्या है? Top layer is empty. There is no NBFC within the top layer. Okay. So I hope you understood why top layer is empty and what this whole system is. Now, what you have to remember from exam point of view is this threshold value. Okay? Because earlier systemically important NBFCs were those NBFCs which had an exposure of less than 500 greater than 500 crore rupees. They were systemically important NBFCs. Now, any NBFC having having asset size greater than rupees 1000 crore, that will be considered either mid level or upper level. Okay? When an NBFC, if an NBFC becomes so big that its failure can lead to systemic collapse or domino effect. Okay, domino effect matlab if there are too many bricks, okay, and if you push one of them, all the bricks can start falling down. That is called domino effect. Okay? So similarly, if one NBFC has become so important that if this collapses, the whole system is going to be affected, then in that case, that will be considered in the upper layer. ठीक है? And middle layer में 1000 crore से ज़्यादा कि NBFCs जिनका exposure इतना नहीं है कि वो systemically important हो जाए. Okay? तो बहुत strong regulation नहीं है, मतलब strong difference नहीं है. Difference बस इस बात का है कि as we progress from the base layer to the top layer, the regulation of the NBFC by RBI will continuously progressively increase. Okay? So let's remove this. Now why are we reading this? Why are we studying this? Because RBI has now improved the regulation, increased the regulatory authority over upper layer and middle layer. We'll be looking at that how. Okay. So what does the new rule say? New rule say that NBFCs in the upper layer cannot lend more than 20% of their capital base to one entity. Earlier it was 15%. Now what RBI has done कि अगर कोई NBFC है, for example, ठीक है, if some NBFC has total asset size, asset नहीं, capital base, ठीक है. Now what is capital base? any NBFC having a capital base. Capital means, for example, there is asset, liability. Okay, asset is all the loans that NBFC has provided to others. ठीक है, liabilities मतलब all the loans that it has taken. ठीक है, or anything that it has to pay back to someone else, that is called liability. Now what is capital? Capital is basically the, you can, in very simpler or layman terms, capital can be understood ki what is my value, like how much money do I have to lend someone. Okay, for example, this is an NBFC. Okay, this is an NBFC. For example, it has a capital base of 500 crore rupees. ठीक है, तो yeah, let's for the sake of simplicity, we assume it has a capital base of 100 crore rupees. In that case, RBI says that if an NBFC is in upper layer, it cannot lend more than 20 crore rupees to one entity, that is one company. For example, Reliance. For example, if Reliance wants fund, it goes to some NBFC and says that I want some fund, kindly grant me some loan. So if that NBFC has a capital base of 100 crore rupees, so it cannot lend to Reliance more than 20 crore. Okay, why has this been done? To, first of all, to remove the singular exposure. ठीक है, अब इसका benefit क्या है? Why has the RBI mandated this? इसको समझने के लिए, if we look at this, okay, for example, one NBFC, there is an NBFC, okay, and it has more than like 40%. It has more than 40% exposure to single country, a single company, one company. Okay. So what is the drawback? What is the problem with this, right? The problem is कि in case that company fails, in case that one company fails, this NBFC will also be put to a huge amount of risk. ठीक है? Because all its capital, most of its capital is invested in the one single company, and then the risk of failing this company puts this NBFC at huge risk. Okay. Now what if this NBFC diversifies its risk? Okay. What if this NBFC diversifies its risk? ठीक है? So for example, it has lent 20% to one company, 15% to other company. ठीक है? In similar way, 15% to other company. In that case, if either of the company fails, तो देखो ये है कि all these companies and single company as well, जिसको 40% exposure था, all the probability of failure of all these companies is same. ठीक है? The probability that either of the company can fail is same, but now the risk has been reduced. ठीक है? Now the three companies has to fail to, अगर इसको, this is 15, 30, 20, 50%. ठीक है? ये इसका 50% एक्सपोजर हो गया इस NBFC का. तो there is an equal chance कि ये भी फेल हो जाए, ये भी फेल हो जाए, ये भी फेल हो जाए, ये भी फेल हो जाए. The chance that either of them will fail is equal. ठीक है? But in case it was connected to this firm with 40% exposure, तो same amount of chance पे, the same amount of chance of failure, NBFC will be exposed to greater risk of 40%. Now RBI has said that you cannot extend more than 20% of your capital base to one company. Okay, so if with the same chance of failure, if this company fails, so only 20% loss will happen. ठीक है? So this I hope you understood. Okay. Earlier it was 15%. The amount of loan that can be extended has been extended by 5%. NBFCs in the upper layer cannot lend more than 25% to a group of entities. ठीक है? ये तो था कि one singular company को आप 20% से ज़्यादा लोन नहीं दे सकते. अब there are connected entities. Connected entities means like Reliance is a group. ठीक है? Tata is a group. Tata has TCS, Tata has Tata Motors and all these companies. तो इफ एन एनबीएफसी इज एक्सटेंडिंग लोन टू टाटा मोटर्स, इट विल हैव टू चेक कि मैंने कहीं पहले ही टीसीएस को लोन तो नहीं दे रखा, या टाटा के किसी और सब्सिडरी फॉर्म को लोन तो नहीं दे रखा, एंड द टोटल अमाउंट ऑफ लोन that it will extend to the Tata group as whole cannot extend 25% of the capital base of the company. Okay, now it was earlier 40%. Okay, now you can observe here that now the risk has been reduced. Okay, why this has been done? Because a group is what happens in the corporate is these groups are operated by some singular entity. Okay, although they are subsidiary companies, but there is a singular control. तो if either of the companies in that group fails, there is a high chance कि उस कंपनी के विदिन, उस ग्रुप के विदिन एक डोमिनो इफेक्ट हो एंड अदर कंपनीज स्टार्ट फेलिंग. ठीक है, तो अगेन द वेरी सेम कॉन्सेप्ट, टू रिड्यूस द रिस्क it has been reduced to 40%. That means the NBFC is in upper layer. The point is upper layer only. This has not been extended to mid layer एंड बेस लेयर. क्यों? क्योंकि मिड लेयर एंड बेस लेयर में वो कंपनीज हैं ही नहीं जो बहुत सिस्टेमिकली इंपॉर्टेंट है, जिनके फेलियर से बहुत ज्यादा फर्क पड़े. तो टू हेल्प दीज लोअर एंड बेस लेयर एंड मिड लेयर एनबीएफसीज टू गेन सम मार्केट वैल्यू, ठीक है, टू मार्केट शेयर ऑल्सो, दिस विल बी हेल्पिंग देम. ठीक है, क्योंकि अदरवाइज what big NBFCs did was they took a like lion share in the whole asset market, and this led to the smaller NBFCs not being able to get the like proper share in the market. Okay, I hope you understood. Now in both of these cases, if board approves, board of directors, अगर NBFC, इस particular NBFC का board of directors approves, तो 5% additional loan can be extended in both the cases. That means here 25% and here 30%. Okay, I hope you understood. तो ये तो हो गया NBFCs के regarding, normal NBFCs. Now infrastructure NBFCs, मतलब NBFCs which are engaged in financing infrastructure, ठीक है, like IL and FS. ठीक है, तो since infrastructure NBFCs have like infrastructures are projects with longer gestation period and like larger capital requirement. Okay, so that is why RBI has set a like larger leverage value for additional expenditure to be done in infrastructure. But still infrastructure is having a higher gestation period. Risk associated with infrastructure is also high. ठीक है, तो exposure to single entity 30%, here 20%, by board approval at max 25%. Now exposure to a single entity in infrastructure sector, ठीक है, in infrastructure sector can be at max 30%. Exposure to connected group of entities can be at max 25%. Again यहाँ भी 25% था, यहाँ भी 25% है, but यहाँ पे board के approval से 5% का extension can be given. Okay, I hope you understood connected group वाला. So this was about lending norms. ठीक है, now let's look at the disclosure norms. Again, one point about lending, one more point about lending norms. ठीक है, तो mid and upper layer NBFCs cannot lend more than ₹5 crore to its employees and directors without the approval of the board. तो अगर एक NBFC है, ठीक है, and उस NBFC के directors को ही लोन चाहिए, ठीक है, in that case the NBFC, that specific NBFC cannot extend a loan of more than 5 crore rupees without the approval of the board. Okay, second case कि even if they are extending a loan less than 5 crore, in that case also they will have to they do not need to take approval of the board, but in that case also the board needs to be apprised of the fact कि we are extending the loan to specific board member or specific employee or specific promoter or regulator. Okay, तो within the NBFC lending को भी more regulate करने की कोशिश की गई है RBI द्वारा, ठीक है, so that corruption can be controlled. Okay, तो ये तो हो गया lending norms. Now disclosure norms. NBFCs must make sure that potential real estate project, ठीक है, if someone is taking loan from an NBFC for real estate project, तो the NBFC need to make sure कि that person has taken the government's approval for that specified project. Earlier what happened was कि a lot of developers took loans from NBFCs, ठीक है, लाइक ILHF, IL&FS, NDHL, ठीक है. And many of the projects were not even in the many of the most of the projects were in the like very nascent phase. They did not had the land for land, they did not have done the land acquisition for that project, they did not have, that was in the conceptual phase, है ना. And what real estate developers did was they went into the market and took loans for those projects which were in the very nascent phase. तो उनका कोई अप्रूवल भी नहीं था अभी गवर्नमेंट से, एंड दे टुक ऑल दे, तो इसमें हुआ क्या कि दे स्टार्टेड टेकिंग मनी फ्रॉम वन प्रोजेक्ट, स्टार्टेड यूजिंग दैट मनी इन द अदर प्रोजेक्ट. इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ कि बहुत सारे होम बायर्स जिन्होंने पैसे दे दिए उनको पोजीशन नहीं मिला बहुत टाइम तक, ठीक है. तो और इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ, अब since that project, the project that was approved by NBFC, the loan that was approved for a specified project did not materialize, so the loan was not repaid back in time, and there was what, like a balance sheet problem, ठीक है, asset liability mismatch for what NBFCs, ठीक है. So now government has made it mandatory that an NBFC which is extending loan to an infrastructure or real estate project, they should make sure that the person who is borrowing has taken the government's approval for that specified project. Okay, and all the NBFCs must disclose the exposure to real estate, capital market and intra-group entities. Intra-group entities मतलब कि like same एक टाटा ग्रुप के अंदर अगर आपने टाटा मोटर्स को भी लोन दिया है, टाटा कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज को भी लोन दिया है, तो उन दोनों का अगर if NBFC has extended loans to two companies, two or more companies within the same group, ठीक है, टाटा ग्रुप या रिलायंस ग्रुप, तो they will have to disclose that kind of exposure, ठीक है, क्योंकि such loans are like they have a higher risk of failure, ठीक है, because if one entity in a group fails, so that can create a domino effect in the whole group, and that can lead to the failure of the whole group as well. In that case, the NBFC should not lose its money, like the risk exposure of the NBFC should be reduced. That is why it is important that any such exposure that NBFC has with respect to the intergroup entities or capital markets are very volatile. Capital market means stock and bonds. तो बहुत सारी NBFCs हैं, all they do is what they purchase stocks and bonds, ठीक है, तो that is capital market. Okay, so and real estate also, these three are very volatile sector, high risk sectors, इसलिए all the exposure का meaning क्या है, exposure is nothing but you can understand exposure is investment plus लोन या इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लस लेंडिंग. एक एनबीएफसी ने किसी कंपनी में इन्वेस्टमेंट भी किया हो सकता है और उसको लोन भी दे सकती है, ठीक है. इन बोथ द केसेस दैट एक्सपोजर needs to be, the government needs to be apprised of the share of exposure in these three sectors. Okay, so these are the new regulations. I hope you understood. Since we are looking at the NBFC, so we can utilize this moment to revise our NBFCs in a very short period of time. How? I hope we went through this. So what are NBFCs? First of all, there is a very peculiar difference between NBFCs and banks. So NBFCs are non-banking financial corporations, companies, whatever you can say. Company basically, ठीक है. So bank is registered with RBI, but NBFCs can be registered with RBI, can be registered with some other regulator as well. Okay, तो बैंक का रजिस्ट्रेशन किसके पास होता है, RBI के पास, बैंकिंग रेगुलेशन एक्ट 1934 के अंदर. ओके, लेकिन कंपनीज का रजिस्ट्रेशन किसके अंदर होता है, कंपनीज एक्ट 1956 या कंपनीज एक्ट 2013. तो there's the fundamental difference between a bank and an NBFC. I hope you understand this term NBFC. NBFC का एक अगर एग्जांपल दें तो आदित्य बिरला फाइनेंस, फॉर एग्जांपल आदित्य बिरला फाइनेंस, ठीक है. Aditya Birla Finance is one such NBFC, non-banking financial. See, finance. It provides finance to companies. Okay? It provides finance to companies. What do banks do? Banks also provide finance to individuals and to companies as well. Okay? So how is a bank different from an NBFC? तो बहुत subtle difference है. Subtle means बहुत minute difference है. तो और सबसे major difference है यही कि banks are registered with banks are registered with RBI under Banking Regulation Act 1934. Okay, whereas companies, I'm not talking about NBFCs only, all the companies are registered under Companies Act 1956 or Companies Act 2013. ठीक है? So I hope you understood. That means NBFCs will be registered under Companies Act 1956. Now, I hope you understood that. तो काम दोनों का almost same है. एक basic difference ये है कि they are either registered under BRI 1934 or under Companies Registration Act, Companies Act 1956. तो यहाँ पे ये point कैसे आया कि how can an NBFC be regulated by RBI or registered with RBI? तो Companies Act 1956 itself provides कि NBFCs can be registered with RBI. Okay, so NBFCs can be registered with RBI, but not all NBFCs. Specific NBFCs like if an NBFC is dealing in stocks, stock market, for example, stock, bonds, debentures, okay, it can be registered with SEBI. SEBI will be the regulator in that case. Another example, if an NBFC is providing you insurance, for example, Bajaj Alliance, okay, Bajaj Alliance is also a non-banking financial company. Why? It provides you financial services in the form of insurance. So Bajaj Alliance, okay, it is also a NBFC registered with IRDA. मतलब, which is the regulatory body? Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority, IRDA. RBI is not regulating Bajaj Alliance. IRDA is regulating Bajaj Alliance. Why? Because Bajaj Alliance is a financial company which is under the IRDA. It is not under the RBI. Okay. तो ये critical difference है. This slide is most important slide because direct question यहाँ से आया हुआ है prelims में, and that is why you need to remember all these points. बहुत simple points हैं. NBFC cannot accept demand deposit. तो क्या आप NBFC के किसी NBFC में जाके अपना खाता खुलवा के वहां पे पैसे जमा कर सकते हो? Yes, you can do that, but not in the form of demand deposits. You can open account with NBFCs and you can deposit your money with them, but that will not be a demand deposit, but it will be a time deposit. ठीक है? Time deposit like FD. आप fixed deposit कर सकते हो. After 5 years, 4 years आप पैसे withdraw कर सकते हो. But NBFCs cannot accept demand deposit. What is demand deposit? Demand deposit is simple. आप बैंक में गए, आपने 500 रुपीज जमा कर दिए, उसी वक्त आपको बाहर निकालना है, आपने 500 रुपीज बाहर निकाल लिए. तो this is possible because banks are under the payment and settlement systems. Payment and settlement system is kind of a clearing house जहाँ पे banks अपना account, balance sheets ये सब manage करते हैं. ठीक है? तो that is not important. What is important is कि demand deposit are those deposits from which a user or the consumer or the person who is having the deposit can withdraw his money and on demand anytime. But time deposits are not those deposits which can be withdrawn by the user at any time. If you open an FD, है ना, and FD का मतलब fixed deposit, it's for a certain time, for example 5 years. ठीक है? तो you cannot say that नहीं मेरे 2 साल पूरे हो गए, मेरे पैसे दे दो. You cannot say that. If you say, the bank will or the NBFC will refund your money, but they will charge a penalty on that. Okay, understood? So first important point is the NBFCs cannot accept demand deposits. Second is they do not form the part of payment and settlement systems. They do not form the part of payment and settlement system. Payment and settlement systems is a system. Payment and settlement systems can be considered as, like, for example, this is a payment and settlement system. It is governed by RBI. ठीक है? RBI payment and settlement systems को govern करता है. All these banks, Bank of Baroda for example, ठीक है? SBI, ठीक है? HDFC, all the banks in the country form the part of payment and settlement systems. Okay, payment and settlement systems में all these banks go to this RBI and they match their assets and liabilities. ठीक है? It is accounting. We don't have to concern ourselves with that. What is important to remember is banks form the part of payment and settlement systems, but NBFCs do not form the part of payment and settlement systems. Okay. Now, deposit insurance is not provided. Okay, even if you deposit your money in an NBFC, for example, a fixed deposit, so your money will not be insured. ठीक है? So there is a corporation, it is a subsidiary of RBI. Again, जैसे payment and settlement system is a subsidiary of RBI. It is a system which is run by RBI. Similarly, deposit insurance credit guarantee corporation. Deposit insurance and credit guarantee corporation. Deposit insurance, first two are deposit insurance, second is credit guarantee corporation. मतलब कि it either provides deposit insurance or it provides deposit insurance, second it provides credit guarantees. Credit guarantees are guarantees when RBI wants someone, for example, कि government wants to bring a scheme, ठीक है? So in that scheme, government says that people can take loans and we will be providing guarantee. We will be providing guarantee against that loan. ठीक है? So you go to SBI and you say that I do not have any collateral, but my guarantor is government itself. ठीक है? So that is called credit guarantee. That concept is called credit guarantee. So this DICGC provides deposit insurance and credit guarantees. But this DICGC does not provide credit guarantee to us. It is within the banking system. Okay? So what is deposit insurance? It insures your deposit up to certain amount, rupees 1 lakh. That means if the bank has run out, if there's a bank run, okay, if the bank fails, so your money up to the tune of rupees 1 lakh will be insured by the RBI. RBI will pay you 1 lakh rupees if you had 1 lakh rupees. अगर उससे कम है तो जितना था आपको उससे ज़्यादा उतना मिल जाएगा. लेकिन if you had 10 lakh rupees in the bank, so RBI will not provide you rupees 10 lakh. It will at max provide rupees 1 lakh back to you if in case the bank runs out or in case the bank fails. That is called deposit insurance. So NBFCs cannot accept demand deposits, do not form a part of payment and settlement systems, and third, they are the deposits are not insured by DICGC. Okay. तो ये तो basic difference था. This is equally important. These points are equally important. Why? Any NBFC cannot have the principal business as agriculture, sale and purchase of goods. ठीक है? Any company the main business of the company is either agriculture or sale and purchase of goods or provision of services, sale and purchase of immovable property, then that company cannot be registered as an NBFC. Okay? Now what is principal business? The term principal business had not been defined anywhere in the RBI Act or Companies Act as well. But RBI has developed a 50-50 testing. 50-50 testing. ठीक है? So the term principal business has not been defined anywhere, but RBI has developed a 50-50 testing. What is this 50-50 testing? That means if an NBFC, if the assets of that company, if the total assets of that company are greater than 50%, if the basically financial assets, ठीक है, financial assets, land is not a financial asset, stock is a financial asset, ठीक है. So if some company say that I have like 100 crore, I have wheat to the tune of 100 crore rupees, I have potato to the tune of 100 crore rupees, that company cannot be registered because the primary income of that company is coming from agriculture, ठीक है. So the primary asset size, the asset size, the main asset should be more than 50% of the assets should be what? Financial assets. Okay, ये तो एक 50 हो गया. The another 50 is the income, the total income of that company. Okay, the total income of that company, more than 50% of the total income of that company should also come from financial assets. Okay, that means एक कंपनी ये तो कह सकती है कि मेरे पास टोटल मेरी वैल्यूएशन का more than 50% financial assets हैं, लेकिन if these financial assets are not generating revenue to the tune that its income becomes greater than 50%, then also it cannot be classified as a NBFC. So this is called 50-50 testing. This has been developed novel. It's a novel development by what? RBI. Okay. So I hope you understood. That is all for NBFCs. ठीक है. तो one important point that I would like to mention here is that NBFCs, ठीक है, NBFCs do not have to maintain CRR or SLR quota. Okay, NBFCs do not have to maintain CRR or SLR quota as opposed to the banks. But in case of deposit taking NBFCs, ठीक है. Now, what are deposit taking NBFCs? Any NBFC that is in the business of deposits. ठीक है. All NBFCs are not in the business of taking deposits. Most of the NBFCs are in the business of what? Extending loans to infrastructure, extending loan to real estate, extending loans to big corporates. ठीक है. So in case if NBFC is in the business of deposit taking, that is called NBFCD. ठीक है. Deposit taking NBFC, in that case it will have to maintain an SLR of 15%. ठीक है. लेकिन बैंक्स के केस में SLR कितना है? 19% के अराउंड है और CRR 4.5%, 4% के अराउंड है. ठीक है. You need to check this data. It might not be correct, but that is not very important. Okay. What's important is that in case of only deposit taking NBFCs, they will have to maintain an SLR of 5%. Otherwise, no NBFC has to maintain either SLR or CRR. Okay. So that is all for NBFCs, and I hope you understood what the new regulations have been brought by government or RBI regarding the regulation of NBFCs.